be daunting to do these things, or just even think about how to make your supply chain more eco-friendly. Even in my personal life, like I'm trying to do things and I'm not 100% great. Like sometimes I'll just go get a coffee with a friend and I didn't bring my reusable coffee container. And there's no need to shame yourself. We're all on this journey together. It's a journey, not a destination, because as more things come up, there's new technology, innovations, products that are better than the last. And we're all just really learning together to better our brands and better them so they're socially responsible and environmentally responsible. So just want to preface that. Don't be overwhelmed. There's a lot of avenues that you can take to make your brand a little bit more sustainable. And I like to say eco-conscious, just because there's a lot of greenwashing or things that are said to be eco-friendly. So just take everything in stride. And then you can always pop questions in the chat if you have any questions, and then reach out to us if you want further conversations with the team we have here about sustainability. So I'm going to go and present. Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So welcome, Embracing Sustainability and Social Responsibility. Let's see. Okay. So I'm Francesca. I'm from ShipBob. I'm one of the partner managers. So I work with the partners you see here on the slides. And my main role is connecting our merchants with partners whenever they have a need. We have David, head of partnerships at Pachama, Chris, partnership manager at Happy Returns, Kathy, senior manager of partnerships at noissue. And then our star speaker today is Haley. She's the founder and CEO of Chippin. So she's going to share her story on her brand and how she really prioritize sustainability and social responsibility. And you guys, when I go to your slides, feel free to intro yourself as well. You know yourself better than I do. So what we're going to talk about today, why you should make sustainability a priority, strategies for reducing offsetting supply chain impact, highlighting Chippin's story and their brand story and how they came to be. And then we'll do a Q&A of questions if you guys have anything for the speakers. So first, we're going to do an active poll. If you go to slido.com and put that hashtag number in, or if you just use the QR code, we want to get an idea of, like, are you currently implementing sustainable practices in your operations? Like, it can even just be something small. Maybe you haven't thought about it, or no, you don't plan to. So if you can go, I'll give you guys like a minute. It's super fast and easy, just so we can get a pulse on, is this something that people are already doing or thinking about, or maybe they don't plan to yet. Okay, cool. Yes, go green. I want to, but I don't know where to start. No one says no, I do not plan to, which is great. Okay. Got 7 people. Oh, I got 8. Okay, a lot of people are doing green initiatives in the chat. Don't distract yourself from the conversation, but in the general chat, if you just have something short you want to pop in, just pop in. Like, a lot of you said, yes, you're already doing green initiatives. Pop in what you guys are doing currently. Maybe they'll get some thoughts, idea for the other attendees. Maybe it's something that they can do easily. I'm curious to see what you guys are doing, or if it's your primary mission. Okay, thanks for voting, you guys. 16 votes is a lot. So the numbers, consumers want eco-friendly brands. Like I just said, like, it's not going anywhere, especially with Gen Zers. Like, their ethos and their morals and like what they believe in, like, directly ties into where they spend their money now more than ever. So brands are already currently offsetting emissions 23%. Companies like Pachama, which we'll hear about later from David, are making this very easy for you guys to do. So this is why this number has grown. Consumers are more likely to make a purchase if they're able to recycle the product packaging, 46%. I would say I fall into this. I'm one of the people that made Amazon note that I have eco-friendly. I want the paper packaging. I don't want plastic. And we get these comment a lot of times from merchants when we're shipping stuff in plastic and they want to switch over to eco-friendly packaging. Just because the consumer gets like shameful if they have to throw out the packaging or don't know how to properly recycle it. Eco-friendly shaming is totally a thing. And I try not to do it, and try not to do it to yourself, because we're all human in the 21st century. And brands are making sustainability one of their top priorities for 2022. A lot of you guys voted that you already have sustainable practices in your direct-to-consumer operations. So 53% are already saying that they're going to make this a priority if they've not already. And there's a 50% decrease in transport-related emissions when you optimize your routing. And we'll get into that later, optimizing where your product is held and then where a majority of your customer base is. So more the reason to enact these sustainable practices in your brand, because consumers are asking about them and they're expecting them already. And other brands are hopping on the bandwagon to do it as well. So a little bit what ShipBob has done to address this, because we want to put our money where our mouth is. And like, we do care about sustainability, but at scale, it is really hard to do. But there's some changes that we've done in the last couple of years to make our brand more eco-conscious. So sustainable practice can drive to 306% higher long-term value. Consumers are demanding it, and they want their brands to be socially conscious of what they're doing. And we partnered with Pachama to offset our carbon emissions from our warehouses. So since Earth Day of last year, that's the amount of CO2 removed from the atmosphere and trees planted that we did with Pachama. And that was through just offsetting our carbon emissions from our warehouses. So we did different planting projects, anti-deforestation projects. And that's just one way we did that, or to address sustainability. And then what I talked about earlier is you can decrease the carbon. Oh, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just say more, I mean, I guess anti-deforestation is technically correct, but I would phrase it more as conservation project.
There we go.
It's more conserving old growth forests, such as places in the Amazon, peatland forest in Indonesia that were at risk. So yes, technically anti-deforestation, more conservation.
Yes, thank you. See, I don't need the technical terms. It's overwhelming. Yes. No, thank you.
It's all how you phrase it.
Yeah, it's all about how you phrase it. Just saving the planet, essentially. But another thing that we did, or we've advised our merchants to do, is decentralizing your physical footprint. So a lot of you guys will be SMBs that are just starting out. And eventually, when you can expand to multiple fulfillment centers, not only are you going to get your products to your customers faster, it could be cheaper too, because you're not shipping it across zones, but you can separate your inventory, maybe East Coast or West Coast, or maybe you see a majority of your merchants are here and there. We can help you to place your inventory, since we have a network of fulfillment centers in multiple facilities. So it's going to decrease the average transit time, most likely the cost. I won't promise that, but also it's going to decrease the amount of carbon emissions produced from not shipping across the country. Just another way to level up your brand and level up sustainability. So this is something that you guys can do in your brand, and we advise merchants to do. And then another thing that we just did in the last 2 years is we're partnering with Link International, which is a recycling company that does recycling for different waste products that be in our facilities. So one of our facilities that we've tested out in, we were able to, what is the number here? Redirect 430 tons of waste from one of our fulfillment centers. So we're recycling plastic packaging, cardboard boxes, PPE, anything. And it's going to the proper channels to be re-recycled, because plastic and most of those things can be re-recycled, but unless you recycle them through the right channel, they're just going to go in the landfill. So we were able to redirect those to actually being recycled. And this is actually a program now that we're going to be rolling out into our other facilities slowly. I won't say it'll be 100% right away, because you have to teach people and set up certain stations, but we're super excited about this, because this is something too you guys can do actionably, maybe at an office, or if you have your own warehouse. We haven't done it at our headquarter office yet, but you could create some type of recycling program and have somebody come and pick up the waste, make sure that it is being recycled properly instead of everything just being thrown in the garbage. So another actionable way that you guys can do this, and we've done it already. And then I'll kick it over to Kathy to talk about No Issue. Do you want me to play the video first, Kathy?
Yeah, that would be great. It's a short little clip. Hopefully the sound's off, because there's some, like, I guess we'd have everyone's attention if the sound is on. But yeah, give it a play if you don't mind.
Okay, maybe I'll mute myself and then I'll turn this on.
Awesome. It should be off, but we'll find out. But yeah, as Francesca said, I'm Kathy from No Issue and going to touch on packaging today. So obviously in e-commerce, packaging is unavoidable. And as a brand, the onus is really on you to find and commit to the least earth-damaging packaging materials. But at No Issue, we're committed to doing that sourcing for brands, making those products accessible, both in price point and quantities, and then ultimately ensuring that you, the brand, have a seamless experience customizing and purchasing said product. Francesca, if you could skip to the next slide, that would be great. Oh, thank you. Yep. So at No Issue, we're very passionate about our commitment to circular materials. And I'm not talking about round, although we do have round stickers, but circularity in the context of a circular environment, of a circular economy, rather. So based on the principles of designing out waste, keeping products in use, and generating natural systems. So we have 3 product frameworks, and every No Issue offered product fits into one, if not more of these framework or more of the 3 frameworks. So the first being compostable. And to us, that means compostable in both a home compost environment and industrial compost facilities. So examples of our compostable product offerings include our stickers and our compostable mailer bags. Second is recycle, so either recyclable or made from recycled material. So our container shipping boxes, product boxes, and craft mailers are great examples of those that fall in the recycled category. And the last is reusable, so a product that's designed to be used multiple times for a variety of functions. So examples of reusable products are tote bags, drawstring bags, ribbons, really anything that, as the name states, you can use multiple times. I do want to be very clear in that no one framework or combination of these 3 frameworks is at present a perfect solution. We all know the unfortunate reality of recycling rates and how limited the compost infrastructure is, particularly here in the US. However, as more brands commit to sustainable options and as more consumers require them as a stipulation for purchasing, the need and the demand for improved waste infrastructure becomes stronger and those solutions are prioritized. So on screen, you're seeing a couple examples of all the products that I pointed or called out rather, and just helps to give kind of a visual element when we're talking about the packaging that we offer. Francesca, if you could skip to the next slide, please.
What's interesting, Kathy, is, oh gosh, I hope I'm not freezing. Okay, I think I'm good. What I've seen recently is Chicago is adapting compostable more. So there was farmers markets. So like I'm more hopeful that's going to become more of a normalized things as these brands take them on and consumers are more educated. So I've actually seen one of our farmers markets that is sponsored by Green City Market, which they do composting. They used to charge for you to put your stuff in there at the farmers market. Now it's free. So they've definitely adapted to offering this to everybody, and then just offering a place like if you have any scraps, or people sell food at the farmers market too, like fast ready food for people to eat, they're encouraging them to use it. So I've already seen this change of compostable becoming more of a normalized thing and them offering it for free versus you having to pay every time that they pick up or even just to put something in a bin. So I'm super bullish about this.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really positive trend that we're seeing. And I think a lot of the food scrap compost has helped to kind of normalize that idea. And the next step will really be layering on more of these non-food scraps and kind of what that compost, infrastructure looks like. So definitely trending in the right direction, and would definitely encourage. One partner that we've worked with, if anyone here is new to composting, is Lumi. So if you look them up, they make these really amazing kind of home compost. They're actually quite nice to look at. They're not stinky or anything like that, but that's a really great kind of entry point to someone beginning their composting journey. And of course, little call out, No Issue products, particularly our compostable bags, are compostable in those really rad little kind of, you can either pop them on the counter or in a cabinet, or, on at the counter at work or something like that, just to kind of start that conversation or start shifting in that direction. Which kind of takes me to my next talking point, and that even the most green packaging solution is not actually sustainable if the recipient does not know it is or what to do with it. So by now, I'm sure we're all likely sick of hearing about the unboxing experience and the power of your packaging presentation and all of that. But there is a really unique opportunity on packaging to use it to communicate about itself. So both the material makeup of the packaging and then also guiding the recipient to the correct disposal stream, all while creating a memorable touch point for them. So on screen, you'll see a handful of No Issue customers who are doing a fantastic job doing such. We have By Bloom here, which is an online florist in the United Kingdom who uses their recycled stickers to show their commitment to plastic-free packaging. We have We Are Knitters, who are manufacturers of and providers of knitting kits, who loudly and proudly declare right on their mailer bags that they're compostable and detail how to dispose of it directly on the bag itself. Also take note of their teal QR code there. Through this, recipients can scan and be taken to a page that has more details on their sustainability commitment. And similarly, Vintage Society, an online vintage shop, has a QR code right there on their recycled hang tags, which leads customers to their site to learn more about their eco-conscious acts and possibly to discover their next vintage treasure. It's cool to note that through No Issue's technology partner, TapKit, these brands are also able to update where that scanned link goes to at any time. So that creates more longevity and flexibility for a packaging design or an already produced package, and then the digital experience that that physical product kicks off. So not only are these education points amazing because they help ensure the packaging is disposed of in the desired way based on its circularity framework, but they also offer each of these brands an additional customer connection point, which ultimately drives loyalty and stickiness. So that wraps up my portion of the presentation. So I'll hand it off to Chris from Happy Returns. But again, I'm Kathy from No Issue. If anybody wants to chat packaging, has questions, ideas, QRs, anything like that, you can find me at Kathy@noissue.co. So thanks everyone for joining, and over to you, Chris.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, excited to chat with everybody today. Thanks so much for the introduction there, Kathy. So just quick introduction of myself, everybody. My name is Chris Schwager, Partnerships Manager here at Happy Returns. I oversee our partnerships ecosystem today as it relates to 3PLs, software technology platforms, as well as agency and consultant relationships within the Happy Returns ecosystem. Prior to Happy Returns, I've been in the supply chain technology space for over 5 years. And have been in the retail consumer goods industry for my entire career, 10 plus years. Without further ado, ultimately want to start by introducing the problem that Happy Returns ultimately look to tackle. Happy Returns is ultimately a best-in-class returns technology provider, service provider via our Return Bar network, which we'll chat here in a second. But ultimately, why returns? Why did we focus on returns out of all the different niches and technology to focus on? And it really ultimately stems from the fact that returns seems to be, pushed to the back burner for a lot of brands. At the end of the day, while everybody's addressing final mile, everybody's addressing outbound shipping SLAs, every other component of the supply chain, returns seems to be, largely ignored. And as a byproduct of that, really it results in three kind of different things happening. Number one, shoppers are left kind of holding the bag. They're left dealing with the pain. I think we've all more or less, kind of experienced the scenario where, we've had similar to this picture that we see here. We have to stand in line at the post office. We have to find cardboard boxes. We have to understand, do I have ink in my printer? Do I have paper? All of these different hoops to jump through just to get my refund or just to return a product that I simply did not like, right? This is a massive shift from retail consumer purchases, whereas in retail, in in-person retail setting, I can try on the medium, the large, the XL, understand what color, size, and fit I like. Online, you don't have the ability to do that, right? So it's just kind of a natural byproduct of e-commerce in general. Second piece is broken for merchants, right? I think at the end of the day, as I mentioned, everybody's focused on outbound shipping SLAs, making sure the customers are happy, that are placing new orders. A lot of the times, we see that, warehouses kind of have a corner for returns where returns just kind of pile up and are addressed when they can be. So ultimately, sending returns more efficiently to warehouses and to our warehouse partners like ShipBob is also one of the core focuses of Happy Returns. And then last but not least, the planet. As we all know, as Kathy just spoke about, obviously, the amount of net new cardboard and, that's associated with e-commerce is massive. And you're doubling that when you are creating a return. And what's even worse is that a lot of the times people do, items are sent in a poly bag, they rip that poly bag open or a cardboard box, they give it to their dog, they throw it out, whatever. They realize they want to return this product. And then at the end of the day, they don't have a box. So they go to UPS, they go to FedEx, USPS, they buy a new piece of net virgin cardboard, which is the worst thing that you can do. And ultimately the planet is left, kind of paying the bill. So with all those things in mind, ultimately we developed Happy Returns, a solution to not only benefit the shoppers, merchants, as well as the planet. Francesca, next slide, please. If you actually might be able to, Francesca, can we flip to the next slide, the Happy Returns experience slide? There we go. Yeah, so if we can start here, just ultimately more or less to talk through how the Happy Returns experience, feels. So that starts with a self-service online branded returns portal. I think everybody's obviously familiar with the returns portal. They've, initiated a self-service return online. Obviously, that process versus contacting customer service is much more easy for the shopper. You don't have to jump through any hoops. And for a brand, it reduces customer service contacts pretty immensely. The second piece is really options we present to the consumer. So obviously, in addition to a mail return option, which we always will offer, we actually highlight the most sustainable return methods, being return to a brick and mortar location if the brand has brick and mortar locations, or return at Happy Returns, which is a box-free in-person convenient return. We kind of dub it as the Kohl's to Amazon returns experience for everybody else. But at the end of the day, a shopper can bring their item in, simply the item, no box required, and the QR code we deliver, and in a 35-second start to finish process, be done with the return and have already received email confirmation that the refund is on their way to the consumer. What we're doing there is essentially aggregating first mile aggregation of returns and taking 10 pairs of shoes or 10 hoodies that would normally have their each in their individual cardboard box with their own shipping label, and essentially directing them to 1-2 different in-person locations, aggregating them in these reusable totes that you see here on the slide with the little Happy Returns logo, and then shipping them for a fraction of the cost back to our short sortation centers before we ship back to the end consumer or to the end merchant. So at the end of the day, not only is Happy Returns an experience that benefits the shopper and can drive immense customer loyalty by making your returns experience not painful in the slightest, but it also presents significant transportation cost savings, as well as is a green solution by helping cut down the amount of net new cardboard that's associated with shipping in general. So, Francesca, if you can flip back to the map, please. Oh, just this slide back, please.
I got you. I got to go back this way. I don't know why when I'm presenting it won't let me go backwards.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I had in the wrong order. Okay, we should be good now.
All right. Now, so what are these return bars, right? So ultimately, we get this question all the time. Are they kiosks, mailboxes? What exactly are they? At the end of the day, this is a network of brick and mortar location partners that are utilizing their store staff and their registers to accept Happy Returns in exchange for the qualified foot traffic that we drive. At the end of the day, our largest partner, FedEx Office, with 1,900 of the 5,000 locations, Ulta with 1,200 locations, Staples with 1,100, Cost Plus with 500, as well as Paper Source, Simon Westfield malls, and a variety of different independent brick and mortar location partners. At the end of the day, 78% of the US population lives within 10 miles of a return bar. So it's very convenient and accessible to the majority of urban, metro populations. And shoppers love the experience. So for the returns where return bars are presented as an option, 75% of shoppers elect to choose the in-person box-free return route versus printing a good old-fashioned mail label. So at the end of the day, this is a solution that merchants and shoppers will love equally. Next slide, please. There we are. Perfect. So just a couple of points about sustainability and how Happy Returns kind of, really helps make a brand's returns more green and more sustainable. So at the end of the day, first and foremost, two obvious call outs. So number one, the fact that it's box free cuts down on the amount of net new cardboard, obviously in the ecosystem in general. And then two, the fact that the customer is doing the first mile rather than a UPS or a FedEx big old clunky truck letting out all these different emissions, that makes a very big difference in terms of the overall emissions associated with a return or shipping in general. So those are kind of two aspects where Happy Returns can help, is reducing the net new cardboard and having that customer do the first mile, as it is, most people aren't driving these big trucks that UPS and FedEx are. Aggregated shipping. So as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, on average, each one of these totes has anywhere between 15 to 30 items. So at the end of the day, you are looking at each one of these totes is replacing effectively 20 to 30 cardboard boxes. And in addition to that, the aggregated shipping model typically saves brands anywhere between 30 and 40% on their returns transportation costs as well. And then last but not least, one other key feature, one feature that might be relevant to some brands on this call is the idea of a returnless refund, right? I think for some categories, it's very important, specifically apparel and footwear, to get that item back to be able to resell it. But for certain, cosmetics companies, nutraceuticals, wellness brands, maybe it doesn't make sense necessarily to get that return back. So one of the features that we have available is called a returnless refund, which essentially allows the merchant to refund the shopper through our self-service portal without requiring them to ship that product back. You can direct them to donate it. You can direct them to give it to whoever they would like to. But at the end of the day, this is one of the best ways to reduce the amount of emissions associated with returns, is asking yourself that question, does it make sense for me to get this product back? Or should I just, save on the returns transportation and try to do something good with it? So, and that is all I got. We'll kick it over to David.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I think one thing before I kind of jump into what we do that's always just so important to note is that when you talk about sustainability and climate tech and different solutions, there is no single solution. There's no silver bullet. This is not my line. There's silver buckshot. And I think there's so many different ways to be tackling and addressing this. I know getting involved in this space 3 years ago, I have significantly cut down, not completely, on the amount of e-commerce and returns. I used to order 3 sizes as well and do that. To learn what you're doing, Kathy, as well. I know we've all received that giant Amazon box with a smaller box inside and been like, maybe we felt bad about ordering batteries for $10, but I digress.
Or the huge box with just, the little items.
The box within the box within the box.
It's a nightmare.
Wrapped in plastic with the plastic air bubble things. Anyways. So what we address at Pachama are the carbon emissions associated with doing business. Now, save for taking your dog for a walk, pretty much anything we do has a carbon footprint. This webinar, the amount of data it takes to power this, everyone logging in, right? There's a carbon footprint associated with this. What we do at Pachama, our mission is to restore nature. How we are going about executing our mission is we are developing technology to improve both the quality and the transparency around nature-based solutions. Today, that is an exclusive focus on forest-based carbon offsets. So as I addressed with Francesca earlier, we support different types of forest projects. Of course, there's reforestation, planting trees. As trees grow, they sequester more carbon. There's also forest conservation, which is, in essence, helping both incentivize better land use and actually provide protection from illegal gold mining, tree poaching, which are big issues in some of our most endangered forests in the Amazon, in Congo, in Indonesia. A carbon offset, a carbon credit, represents 1 metric ton of CO2 sequestered from the atmosphere. And so the idea is companies measure their footprint from doing business activities on one side, and then ideally companies figure out ways to reduce what their footprint is. But of course, when you're talking about e-commerce, and I'm not judging anybody here, I order a lot of e-commerce, right? It's a pragmatic solution to how can we help you reduce that impact. And when you support offsets through Pachama, you are supporting nature. And I think that's also super important to remember. Carbon is a super important variable, but it is not the only variable. Of course, as a greenhouse gas, it's super important that we keep track of this and reduce what we're putting into the atmosphere. But when you're talking about nature, we're talking about protecting unique flora and fauna, wildlife habitat corridors, indigenous communities, access to clean water, agroforestry, the list goes on. What Pachama is doing is we are using remote sensing, which is a fancy way of saying we use satellite imagery, LiDAR, NASA data to better actually measure. We can take a project that's say 20,000 hectares, and we can zoom out and we can look at 1,000,000 hectares, and we can go, sorry, this is an American audience probably, so 1 hectare is 2.5 acres, and we can go all the way back to the 80s, and we can analyze the quality aspects of these projects. Are they actually additional? In other words, are these projects actually justified? Was this area at risk of deforestation? Is this a reforestation project where we've observed that a landowner has cut down old growth forests and now they're planting trees on top of it to then get carbon credits? So they double dipped on timber and now they're getting carbon credits. How did they draw the project boundaries? We call it gerrymandering. Did they do it in such a way that they're not including heavily clear-cut forests, but they are protecting offshore islands, steep ravines, areas that were not actually at risk of being commercially harvested? If you can go to the next slide, please. So wanted to highlight how we work with ShipBob in particular. So we've created a really easy integration with them. And what we in essence are doing is we are working with ShipBob to help its merchants better track and take account for the offset with the carbon emissions associated with using ShipBob services. So it basically measures the average size of a package, the weight of the package, the distance from warehouse to user, and the method of transportation. Air travel is going to be a lot significantly higher than truck versus train. And then each merchant can opt in every month. It will calculate what the emissions are, and then you can easily opt in to pay and purchase to actually support different forest projects around the world that are compensating and drawing down an equivalent amount of carbon. So yeah, that's just a highlight of what we do and how we work with ShipBob, right, to allow its merchants to take one small part of that value chain. And again, when you're talking, shipping is just one part of it. We talk about the actual production of the product, end of life cycle, packaging. There are all so many different factors that go into it. So, we're trying to make this one part of it really easy, seamless, and really pretty affordable. I think we can let Brianna speak to that and their partner. I think on average, it costs most merchants like less than $100 per month. So not something, right, that itself is prohibitive and frankly should be built into every consumer chain product. So yeah, I'll pass the ball.
Thanks, David. Yeah, if you guys are a current ShipBob customer, it's really easy to get started. You can go onto the dashboard and try to connect the integration. If you have any questions for Pachama or the integration, just feel free to leave something in the general, and then we'll get in touch with you about it. Thanks, David. And now we're going to hear from Haley. We're going to do kind of like a Q&A speed round. So feel free to pop any questions you have as she talks about her story into the chat. The team here is going to ask her questions as well. But Haley is one of our merchants who's actually using the Pachama integration, and her brand is focused around sustainability and social responsibility. So thank you, Haley, for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Hi, guys. Please disregard the name. My teammate Brianna and I had some link issues, but I'm Haley Russell. I founded Chippin, and we're all about chipping in and crafting high-quality pet nutrition that is better for the planet. So very much aligned with everyone on the call today. And the way that we go about that is by tapping into a really special suite of proteins. And so we couple smarter protein sourcing with smart technology to create eco-friendly recipes to reduce what we call the eco paw print. So today we tap into kind of a suite of proteins that include things like insect protein, invasive species, and algae. And really we look at it as there's a kind of world of underutilized proteins out there that our four-legged family members absolutely love. that are very nourishing for them and that can use 80% plus less resources. So our core competency really is in the production of pet foods. And then what we do is we partner with folks like ShipBob or Pachama for other aspects of our customer experience and kind of brand development to reduce our eco impact, whether it be offsets or avoiding plastic packaging. I got started after really a lifelong experience of being a foodie. I was born in Berkeley and grew up in the DC area. I started my career in kind of a very sort of typical fashion, working in finance out in Los Angeles, and then very quickly shifted to a variety of different roles in the food industry because I'd always loved food. And I've been a lifelong animal lover and basically kind of had the experience of I worked at a couple different human food startups. I was really interested in protein. I was doing a deep dive on cricket protein and saw that my family golden doodle Wren ate a cricket and she absolutely loved it. And that was kind of this aha moment for, wow, well, I've been grocery shopping for pet food my entire life, and here I am. It's the same stuff I've always been seeing, and it's kind of insane because every other consumer category seemed to have been disrupted, whether it was more sustainable shoes or reusable water bottles or plant-based burgers for people or non-toxic cleaning goods. And then I hit the pet food aisle and it was the same kind of beef and chicken kibble or maybe some different kind of formats on the refrigerated side, but the protein was the same. And so I kind of went into a deep dive. And when I learned that if you consider all of our USA pets, so really primarily cats and dogs, 180 million of them as their own country, they rank 5th in global meat consumption, which was just wild to me. So all of our USA pets are the 5th largest global meat consumers. And that then kind of was a moment in which I saw that this was not kind of only an individual sort of micro challenge that I was encountering of finding really drool-worthy, high quality and planet-friendly food for myself, but there was really a massive problem with our food system that wasn't being addressed. And that stemmed from really, when you look at it, there being kind of a challenging dynamic in that we actually can't feed our pets cauliflower kibble, right? So a lot of the tactics that have been taken, whether it be using pea protein or cauliflower or Brussels sprouts to craft foods that are great for people, don't work for our dogs and especially don't work for our cats. So we really had to kind of reimagine the pet food supply chain. And we did that by establishing these direct sourcing partnerships with small to medium-sized farms that are harvesting crickets or catching wild-caught silver carp, which is an invasive species that has the nutrition profile of a salmon, but is a real threat to biodiversity in the Great Lakes and the more than $7 billion Great Lakes fishing economy and people whose livelihoods depend on that. And then also, sourcing a California-grown spirulina, which is a vegan protein that's more than 55% protein, and everything's more than digestible than chicken. And so it was really kind of just a win-win all around as I set out to create this company, and then have just been thrilled to start to participate really in an ecosystem of partners that are helping support us kind of beyond the food manufacturing and the sourcing side of things. So I'm happy to take any questions if now's a good time for it.
So you were saying, Haley, that you were looking for a food for your dog that was not meat, fish, poultry, which is Even I get my dog like turkey. Like that's when I'm like really balling out on her. It's like I'm giving her like ground turkey that I boiled, or I'm getting her like freeze dried turkey. So essentially the brand came to be because you were looking for something that wasn't in the market. And it aligned with your values of sustainability and what you were looking for. And that's how the brand came to be.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I think like whenever you're starting a company, it usually starts with that personal pain point. And that was the situation for me. And then then I ended up adopting another dog who had food allergies. And so he was missing a lot of fur. His skin was really pink. And that's when I learned that beef and chicken are the top allergens for pets. And so it was sort of this process of, kind of had an overarching hypothesis that there might be something here. And then as I learned that we could couple the sustainability opportunity really with delivering on what is a massive health need and interest as well, then I really went all in.
Nice. That's awesome. I always think of the brands I start based on things I can't find in the market. And sustainability always comes up as one of them. So you're hitting the mark with some people in the comments. I'm curious, how did you have so much nutritional background on what dogs need and how plant-based foods would feed into that, especially when the market is so dominated by like meat, chicken, poultry, and like bully sticks? I think we're just so used to feeding, we're so used in the 21st century feeding our dogs very nice food. I think dogs in the past probably got scraps, for now we're babying our dogs. So how did you navigate even something it seemed like you've done nutrition in the past, but for me to come on to realize this need and be somebody doesn't have any nutritional background, like how did you navigate this to find out, okay, my product's actually really good for dogs too. It's not only filling the sustainable need, but it's actually really good for them.
Yeah, that was something definitely where ensured that as part of the team, I brought on veterinary experts. I mean, my background is in finance, and then I spent a lot of time in food supply chains, whether it be cold pressed juice or working in coffee in sourcing internationally, and so really actually even before kind of formally starting Chippin, I first went to a PhD who's an expert in novel ingredients for companion animals, so dogs and cats, got her view on the alternative proteins that I was thinking about that I knew made sense. So crickets and the silver carp and the spirulina that I knew made sense from theoretically a health standpoint, and certainly from an ecological standpoint, and certainly from even just kind of an efficiency standpoint, even when you look at inflation today, right? Like beef, chicken, these super resource intensive and ultimately inefficient proteins are vulnerable. And that's something I saw years ago, and now we're starting to actually see play out. So I went to PhDs who are experts in animal nutrition. We actually then conducted studies on each of our proteins. We were able to confirm through those studies that they're more digestible than chicken, and that the amino acid content, so like the building blocks of the protein, was really strong. And then I sort of courted for more than a year a board certified veterinary nutritionist. So someone who's veterinarian, did her PhD in nutrition, and then did, kind of clinicals with that. And there are very few people in the world that have that background. And so even as a small brand, to have someone on our team with that expertise has been huge, but was really important because, right, like we're not going to be able to change the food system if we're not creating an offering that's better from a health standpoint in addition to a sustainability standpoint.
That's awesome. That's kind of what we do at ShipBob, is if you can't do something on your own, and why we have all these partners here today and how to help your brand, it's you didn't know, so you had to go find someone to be on your team with you to get it done. So it's really cool to hear that you teamed up with veterinarians to get that product out there. Another question I had specifically around sourcing your ingredients. What was the process like for that? Because I think that's also a daunting thing, is maybe they're an existing variant or maybe they're pre-existing, they just don't know where to start. Now everyone's backpedaling. All these big brands are verifying their suppliers depending on where they get their materials and actually putting where their money where their mouth is. So what was the process like for identifying suppliers that you can trust?
Yeah, that was something where my past background did give me some insight into what like big coffee brands have been doing and some of the challenges that they were facing with sustainability and being able to really drive a traceable supply chain. And so it was important to me from day one that for Star Proteins that we had a just completely direct. Am I cutting out? I think, is it all good?
You're back.
Okay, cool. Next drama, that we had a direct supply chain, that I knew those partners, and I think that that's critical from a safety standpoint. So making sure that we're directly sourcing it, we can lab test each batch, make sure things are all good. But then also to your point, it's like if you look at a traditional meat supply chain, actually. It's actually kind of crazy because it's sort of similar to baby formula. So it's a very consolidated industry. So up to 85% of the supply chain, like 85% of the supply chain for beef is owned by 4 major conglomerates. And then pork and chicken are very similar, where it's the 4 big players that own more than 50% of the supply chain. And so it's also kind of a risk management feature for us to directly source, because then we have visibility into what does their supply look like. Are there any kind of hiccups coming down the pipe, because we have a direct line of conversation, and then we're not relying on a massive company as kind of a middleman to source. So that was big for me. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat too. I'm happy to jump into.
Let me take a look and see. Does anyone else on the panel have a question while I look through the chat? I think someone asked if you're making cat food, which I think you already alluded to when we talked yesterday.
Oh, yeah. So cat, that's a big question. Stick with us. Please sign up on our website. We'll have cat products coming up. Because obviously cats are carnivores. So Chippin is a great fit. We don't have a cat product yet. We started with dogs because I currently have dogs, although I had cats when I was a kid. And then, we have things in development. So Kelly, please stand by. I can't wait to give your cat some Chippin.
Nice. Okay. Jennifer just asked, can you tell us about researching packaging and how you ended up with what you use?
Yeah. So we use packaging that is made from post-consumer recycled content. And so we committed to that a couple of years ago. We went through kind of like the whole analysis. Well, first off, packaging for food can be a little bit challenging because obviously you have the food safety issues. You got to ensure that the product is able to weather going through a really hot journey on a truck. And so we went through kind of like the whole gambit of options. And at least, at the time I was making that decision, had some concerns around, if it was compostable, if it was actually going to be able to compost or things like that. And so ended up from both a food safety standpoint and then also just kind of like accessibility, and then also kind of the for us, and then kind of the third thing was with our co-manufacturing relationships, had to be very careful about the type of packaging that we were using based on their process of like sealing the bag. And so that's been one thing that's kind of interesting from a sustainability standpoint, is you're always kind of looking at this matrix of how can I make sure that I can create a product that can be accessible for everyone, that reduces the eco-paw print to the kind of maximum value possible, and that also is feasible then even with like our co-manufacturing relationships and partners and the machinery that they have and that we're going to be able to use kind of moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely not, like David said, a one size fits all. There's not a perfect solution, especially for packaging. Kathy definitely supplied a lot of options. I think the most important thing is educating people on the packaging and what can be disposed and not disposed of. But we're going through the same conversation right now because we're trying to enable eco-friendly packaging as a standard packaging option at ShipBob. And so we're going through the same thing of like, what's durable? Is this padding actually like padded enough to protect stuff? Like, will consumers actually throw this out the right way? So I think you touched on a lot of good points. And I think more people are doing post-consumer recycled waste products. I think it's more and more becoming a thing. Everyone's packaging is made of this, or you're getting non-virgin cardboard that's made from post-consumer recycled waste.
I think it's also my sense as a sustainability professional, just always important to, and super interested in what Kathy was saying is like on actually highlighting what sustainable packaging means, because one of the issues that I'm starting to see in the last couple of years, I mean, it's great that there's all sorts of this environmental awakening and awareness, but there is so much greenwashing and there's so much stuff that's labeled as green that isn't actually green. So I think being able to actually, right, like, and I think that's on merchants as well to like, not just to do their homework and who they're signing up for, in the same way that merchants do their homework if they're going to choose offsetting with us, right, in terms of learning. There's so many different types of offsets and they're not all equal and they're not all as good for, just because you're offsetting doesn't necessarily mean you're actually doing that well for the planet. So I think that's always super important for you as a merchant, and then also to be able to share with your customers what it actually means.
I agree 100%. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Because we're coming up at 5-minute mark, and I'm super excited because I didn't know how long we'd be able to chat, and I feel like we could chat for hours about this. So pop questions in the chat. Something that Kathy and I were talking about when we were talking about Haley, you coming on and speaking, was, do you have any advice on how to strike the right balance of humor and reality when it comes to communicating sustainability? Because she said your website does a really good job of it, right, Kathy?
It does. Yeah, I was going to give you a compliment on that, but then also ask the question, because I think that can be the challenge, right, of is communicating the gravity of a situation while not turning people off or scaring them or making them feel hopeless. So I thought that Chippin did an amazing job on your sustainability page of speaking to the problem that you're solving, but also taking kind of a fun, conversational, not doomsday approach with it. So would be curious and kind of, how that came about, and any advice you can lend there.
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for saying that. That definitely was something we thought a ton about. It was very much intentional in the creation of the brand. I mean, I think one of the core things that I always think back to is like what inspires people to act, and it's usually not being paralyzed with fear. And so since we were all about chipping in and really working to like very much involve people and pets in this journey of reimagining the pet food system, the approach that we took, and I think it's going to be different for every single brand, right? Because you kind of every brand has its own voice. Given the product and the ultimate consumer and customer, it'll be kind of a different approach. But the approach that we decided to take was to kind of lend a voice to the pets, to make it less about like us saying, hey, this is what you should be doing, and more about like what our pets would want us to do to help save the planet, because they really like nature, or they, really want to see everyone happy. And so to accomplish that, one of the approaches that we ended up going with was really adopting kind of a comic book style, so that we could couple this like educational content related to sustainability, also the health content, and give agency to our ultimate consumer, which is the pet. And so then along with that, we always try to have kind of, fun taglines like "Save the Earth, it's the only planet with dogs," or little things like possum, and just make it like fun and humorous, because ultimately a lot of the activities that you can participate in that help out the planet can be a lot of fun. And so why not acknowledge that and really just highlight that and try to have a good time as we make change that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, your little comic snippet was really cute. Okay, final last words. I think we're going to come down like a minute and a half. Haley, what advice do you have to brands, maybe just starting off, or maybe they're in the process and they want to make change and enact sustainable and socially responsible activities? Like, what advice do you have for them, or like, where should they start?
Yeah. I mean, I'm available, so you can talk to me. Feel free to contact me. But when I was developing this brand, I looked at and focused on like one thing that was going to be our core competency. And so for that was, let's tackle like protein within the pet food industry, because that's where there is the most massive problem, and that's where like we have the ability to really make a difference. And then let's partner with other folks. And so I would kind of start with like, what's the first step of like where you can really make a massive difference, and then maybe think about partnerships you can create for kind of rounding out the sustainability experience for your brand moving forward.
That's great insight. Anyone else have any other questions as we're hitting the end to this? If you guys do have any questions, pop them in the chat. Anything after this, or feel free when I send out the recording to reply with the questions, because I can always CC the team here onto the email if you have more questions about their product, or maybe want to connect about sustainability. We're all people that are pro sustainability, and it's part of our lifestyle and something that we believe in, or we wouldn't have been here. So feel free, if you do have any other thoughts or comments or want to connect, please connect with us. And then share this recording too with your friends, especially if you have brands that you're friends with that are looking to do sustainable practices as well. The whole point of this was sparking a conversation. So hopefully you learned something here that you can bring to some other business owner, or maybe someone else that's trying to enact sustainable practices in their lifestyle. Thank you all for attending. Thank you so much, Kathy, David, Chris, and Haley. I really appreciate it. And again, just shoot me over any questions when I send out the recording. And we'll see you guys in the next webinar. Thank you. Bye, everyone.